It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Heidi-ho, hey, hee-hee-ha. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. Nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. I'm always happy to be here. Trey Pearson is here today. Trey is a singer-songwriter from Columbus, Ohio, who was formerly in a band called Everyday Sunday. Everyday Sunday was a Christian rock band, and now he is a solo artist. He's got a new single out called Silver Horizon. You might have heard of Trey. He made some headlines, came out publicly as gay, and rocked the Christian rock world, apparently. So he's going to tell us all about that, tell us his story. Before we get to Trey, a couple of announcements. We still have a couple of free downloads of Jane Yates's audiobook, Relax. The book is an aid to help people overcome the grief due to the loss of their beloved dog. And it's a very nice, relaxing meditation kind of audiobook. We've got a couple left. Jane was nice enough to give us free. So if you'd like to get your free download, send us an email at radio@douglascolemanmusic.com. That's radio@douglascolemanmusic.com. And please put the word relax, R-E-L-A-X, for those of you that are spelling challenged, in the subject line. And we will send you your instructions and your code for your free download. Once again, that's radio@douglascolemanmusic.com for your free download of the audiobook Relax. Our Patreon page is still up. If you like what we're doing and you want to help us get to a 2-show-per-week format, please check us out at patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. And if we can meet our goal, we will go to a 2-show-per-week format. We've got lots of people interested in being on the show. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to do a 2-show-per-week format at the moment. We can only do 1 show per week. So please help us out, patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. You can help us out for as little as $1 a month. If you'd like to pay more than that, we're offering advertising on the show. We will mention your product or run your ad if you've got an audio ad. So please check us out, patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. We will be right back with Trey Pearson.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of the Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship, that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps from the UK, record producer, engineer. You might have heard of me. I've worked with artists from Elton John to Led Zeppelin to Bad Company, Twisted Sister, Robbie Williams, Oasis, many great bands and artists in the past and the present and hopefully in the future. But you can work with me as well. You know, all you got to do is get in touch with me on eppsmusicproductions.com. That's EPPsproductionsmusic.com. And I can help you with your productions and with your recordings. A lot of people do home recordings now, which you can only take so far. Maybe they need a bit of professional help. So get in touch with me and we can sort it out. And thanks for Douglas Coleman for giving me this spot. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bye.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. See? Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Wrong hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Trey Pearson. Hi, Trey. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. You've got a real interesting story. I saw it a while back. You were on the front page of Yahoo, and people were really kind of fascinated about your story. I want to get into that a little bit with you. Before we get to that, though, if you could just tell us briefly your background, where you grew up, and how you started with music, and then we'll get into the story that everybody saw on Yahoo, probably.
Sure. I grew up in a super conservative Christian home and was very involved in church and youth group and things like that growing up. When I got to high school, after doing a lot of kind of semi-professional theater downtown Columbus in the city I grew up in, I got involved in a youth group quite a bit where I ended up starting my own band. And at the end of my freshman year of college, I ended up signing a record deal with a big Christian record label out of Nashville, and sort of went straight on a tour, made an album, went out on tour, and honestly, I've been touring, doing music ever since. So for a long time, I had a band called Everyday Sunday, and that's the band that I had with the Christian record label and everything like that. But I grew up in a home that taught me that I could choose to be straight, that God would, hated homosexuality, and that it wasn't natural, and that if you wanted to experience love and to experience family, then you had to be this sort of cis straight person. And so that's, I've always wanted to know what it's like to be in love and to have a family. And when you don't really know what to compare what it's supposed to be like to be in love to anything else, and you're trying so hard not to be gay, which was exactly what I was trying to do. I dated girls and eventually found a girl that I did love a lot, and thought, man, I really could have a family with this person. And it wasn't the kind of love that felt like that physical attraction, although I longed for that and desired that. It's also like sort of a big thing, especially in the evangelical Christian world, to save yourself sexually until you're married. And so I never had sex before I was married, and never even made out with a girl before I was married. And it was one of those things that I just thought and hoped, fingers crossed, prayed that it would all just magically work, on my wedding night. And when I got married and found out very quickly, I did marry her, and found out very quickly that it was going to be a lot more difficult than that. And so here I am, was in this Christian rock band touring the world, married to a woman, and over several years, just dying inside because I couldn't be what my wife needed me to be. I couldn't be. I couldn't find that peace and that being okay with who I was. And so it took a really long time for me to accept myself, and I was never even able to say that I was gay. I couldn't admit that to myself, let alone anyone else, really until 7 years into my marriage. And so almost 2 years ago, I came to a place where I finally decided to get help, married with 2 kids, in this Christian band. And for the first time in my life, I was able to admit out loud to a pastor friend of mine that I thought I might be gay. And from that point on, I really started this process of counseling and just really facing something that I'd been afraid to face my whole life. And that's sort of the really quick version of how I got to where I got to before I came out, publicly. And
did you go out with any men during the time you were married to your wife?
No. I had, like I said, it was one of those things that I was never able to even allow that. It was such a compartmentalized thing that, like, I knew I had those attractions, and I knew where my head had to go to even be able to try to perform. But it was one of those things that there was no way that I was going to allow myself to think that I was gay.
So it was really very self-loathing. You would have these thoughts of other guys, and then you go, no. So you were fighting the whole process, yeah?
Yeah, my whole life.
You said you had 2 children, right, with your wife? I assume you're not married anymore. You're divorced?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. How did your kids react when you came out?
My daughter, she was 5 turning 6, and my son was 2 turning 3. And so with my son, it was like he'll never know anything different, but with my daughter, she was in kindergarten, and so I guess she had already, so kind of as I was going through that, was turning 6. And so when my ex-wife and I, when we started to kind of go through the process of just like figuring out what was next for us and how to deal with this whole situation, after a couple months of counseling, finally I was able to write out this whole letter that I read out loud to my wife to try to explain to her everything that I'd been going through since I was a kid. And by that time, we'd already been going to counseling for a month and a half, 2 months. And I think she was prepared for that possibility. But in that moment, she was crazy gracious and crazy loving, and told me how proud of me she was for me being able to be honest with myself. And so she was very supportive, especially in that early time, as we were kind of figuring out, wow, what does this mean for us and our lives, our kids. And so we stayed living together for several months through that process, probably for 6 months. And we knew eventually we didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know if we were going to live together for a year and kind of figure out as roommates, and because we have the same kids, and we didn't know what the healthiest way to move on was. It's such a peculiar situation. At that time, I didn't know anybody who had been through the same thing. And now, of course, since then, since I came out, I've learned that there's a whole lot of people that have gone through this, but I didn't know any of those people at that time. So I don't know. I think after several months of kind of figuring it out, we decided we had moved in with my parents for a while temporarily while we figured it out. And so at first, our daughter, she knew we were going to get a new place to live, of course, and we weren't going to live with my parents forever. And so at first we just told her, hey, right now we've always lived in one loving home, but instead of getting one loving home when we move out, we're actually going to have 2 loving homes, and mommy's going to be at one, daddy's going to be at the other. And she was really great with that. We didn't know how she would react, but she was, I think being 6, they're kind of at that point, you're like, guys, are they going to take this really rough? Are they going to just kind of bounce off of it like it's no big deal. And that's really how she reacted, which I was super grateful for. And, she was excited that she was going to have 2 beds, one at each house, and didn't seem like a problem. And then after we had moved apart from each other for a couple months, before my story came out publicly, I think probably 2 weeks before my story came out publicly, I was really hoping to find a way to tell her in some, elementary capacity that Daddy was gay, and try to kind of make sure she knows that before somebody else says something in the wrong way. Not really sure how to handle that again, not knowing anybody that had been really through the same kind of situation, and not only somebody that had been married before, but somebody that is in the public eye. And a couple weeks before my story came out publicly, I picked her up from kindergarten one day, and she knows what a stepmom is. I'm sure she has friends with stepmoms, and my ex-wife's father has been married several times, and so she gets what a stepmom is. And she just asked me out of nowhere. She's like, "Daddy, am I ever gonna have a stepmom?" I was like, "No." I was like, "It's one thing I can guarantee you're probably never gonna have." And so, I just felt right in that moment. I just said to her, "Hey, I was like," and thank God I can say this now. I said, a lot of times boys marry girls, but sometimes boys marry boys, and sometimes girls marry girls. And if Daddy ever gets married again, it'll be to another boy." And she's like, "Really?" And she was like looking at me for a minute to see if I was messing with her. And I was like, "Yeah, really." And she thinks about it for a second. She's like, "That's awesome." She loved it. It's really never been a problem. She's always, been great about it and excited, and she gets it. When my story came out, originally it came out on the cover of a magazine called 614 magazine, and that's sort of what I guess prompted it to go viral or whatever. But it just said gay, period, Christian, period, rock star, period on the cover of the magazine, and with my picture. And she's like, "Daddy, what's gay?" I was like, "Well, you remember how I told you sometimes boys marry boys and girls marry girls?" I was like, that's what, gay means that. And she's like, "Oh, okay, cool." And, we've moved into a really great neighborhood that's, I think very forward thinking here in Columbus. And 2 doors down from us, there's lesbian moms that have a little boy that's right between my kids' age, and they're all best friends. And, I think within a couple blocks of me, I know of at least 5 or 6 gay couples, and some of them have kids. And so, I'm very thankful to be in an area where my kids won't ever have to unlearn or, feel uncomfortable about who their dad is. And hopefully where they grow up in a way that they always feel comfortable about who they are, no matter what that is,
It sounds like your wife really took it well. I mean, did she have any clue as to your sexual orientation, even on the wedding night?
I think that's still a tough thing that we don't have a chance to talk about a whole lot. And I think there's different stages of grief. And I think in that moment, she took it extremely well, and was as gracious as I could have ever asked. And really, honestly, it really made me feel set free in that time. And, I'll say that it has its ups and downs, and there's still a lot of grief to be had for both of us about things that we lost. But I also think, gosh, yeah, of course she had to have wondered deep down, even though it was such a taboo thing in our sort of church Christian culture that we never could talk about it. I failed so much in that department that it had to have crossed her mind, I'm sure. And I don't know to what degree or anything like that, but I can't imagine that it was complete shock by the time we sort of worked through it or whatever.
Well, it seems like she should have been either resentful, or she would have been like, "Oh, I can change you." I hear that one a lot.
Yeah. Thankfully, we had both really progressed a lot in our faith over the years, where I think a few years into our marriage, we just really started questioning a lot of our own thoughts on, what we thought about, especially when the gay marriage debate was happening before it was legalized. And honestly, she has a transgender sister, and that happened a couple years before I came out. And we were both really supportive of, Heather, who used to be a man. And so I think that kind of stuff was already really moving in both of us before we were able to face our own sort of truth in our own situation.
No, so she had some experience then with her sister.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, that certainly helps, because a lot of times people who have no relationship with anybody gay, transgender,
right,
they have a hard time with it.
Absolutely. And I've definitely experienced a lot of that. And I think, I do think, like I said, I think there's very different stages of grief. And I don't know. I'm just very thankful that she was in the place that she was when I did come out.
I always find it interesting with the conservative Christians that it seems like you can either be gay or Christian.
Yeah.
They don't allow you to be both.
Right. And that's a lot of the church culture we grew up in. And honestly, she's still surrounded by a lot of that, and the church culture that her and her family are a part of. And that's tough. And it's one of those things that I really desire strongly for my children not to be a part of, because I know what kind of damage that sort of thinking did to even us, and as a married couple and as a family. And so it's tough, and I realize that there's still a lot of that stigma, but I do think it is changing, especially among young people. The quickness that it's changing is pretty amazing to see.
Well, I think it's interesting, and I do believe it's a generational thing, because I grew up in Massachusetts, and Mass was the first state to legalize gay marriage back in 2004 or 5, I think.
Something like that.
And by 2013, it had gone to all 50 states. At the time that they took the poll in 2005, a nationwide poll, it was something like 80% said they were not in favor of gay marriage.
Sure. And I think, 50 years from now, young people will look at this like we look at black and white people drinking from different water fountains. They'll be like, "Wait, what? You didn't let gay people get married?" I do think it is, like you said, very generational.
Let me get back to your music here for a minute. You were in a band called Everyday Sunday, and now you're doing solo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Just premiered my debut single as a solo artist a couple months ago, and just premiered the music video on Teen Vogue, and it's been a lot of transition, but also a lot of the it feels like being in a very experienced place to be starting over, but it's still starting over. So,
well, did you get more media coverage for your music or for your coming out when you were with Everyday Sunday?
I think that's, they're just very different. The music career was over a lot of years, when I've played in all 50 states and 20 countries, and I've had a handful of number one U.S. Billboard singles on Christian radio. And I think the longevity of exposure of that probably is what helped prompt the story to be so talked about. I get that the story's interesting in itself, and that there were probably definitely a lot of people that had never heard of me hearing about the story. And so I don't know. I think that's a weird, I don't know how to answer that.
Okay. I was just curious because...
Yeah, I mean, when the story came out, in an instance, or like in a day or a few days, it's definitely... I had never been the number one most trending topic in the world on Facebook before, so I suppose that's interesting, right? When the magazine came out, it got picked up by the New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post, Billboard magazine, NBC, ABC, CBS. It just felt like everywhere. I think you said you saw it on Yahoo.
Yeah, you were front page on Yahoo for a day.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was surreal. It was this weird kind of surreal feeling of, yeah, I'd never experienced anything quite like that before, that's for sure.
So probably you had a decent level of success with the band. And then when you came out, see, what I found interesting about it is that it became very sensationalized news, I think, because of the Christian factor. Because a lot of musicians have come out, and it didn't make the front page of Yahoo.
Yeah, maybe it's different. Like, the lead singer of a band that I love a lot called Passion Pit. They're a big alternative band. The guy who basically is Passion Pit, he came out a couple years ago and is, trending and one of the most talked about things. But again, successful band. But I do get the extra unique factor of me being on a Christian record label, married to a woman. It's an interesting story, and I think an important story, and I think that's why it was so important for me to kind of tell my truth, and the strong desire to kind of help anybody else to keep from having to go through what I've gone through. I think about just in the Christian music industry in general, how much is hidden and how much they're catering to these people that want to see the world a certain way. And if they found out the truth of the behind the scenes of the actual Christian music industry, it would tear it apart. And, and not just sexuality, but I think that's an element. And there's artists that I know that are huge, that are, queer and not out publicly because it would destroy their career. And it's a shame in a lot of ways, because I think, man, if those people would have been able to share their truth with their platform, it might have been able to help somebody like me when I was younger that looked up to those kind of artists so much, and I felt like if there's something I could do to help anybody else going through what I've gone through, I've become very passionate about doing that, knowing how much hell I went through to be able to face and accept who I am.
How much of a hit did your career take when you did come out? I read a couple of things that they wanted you off there was a music festival.
Yeah.
And they wanted you off the bill.
That was a unique situation in general. No, yeah, it definitely took a hit, and there's places all over the world that will never have me back again, of course, and that is extremely, extremely difficult when that's what pays your bills, and it's what's paid your bills your entire adult life. And so I think it's been a lot of figuring new things out. And but yeah, they're the owner of the biggest Christian music festival in the country. He called me privately to tell me he was proud of me, and in the same thought, realizing he's never going to have me to his festival again, and that's it's a shame. And I get, unfortunately, I get why some of these more closeted artists never come out because of that kind of stuff. And then there was a festival in California that's not necessarily one of the biggest Christian music festivals, but it's still got a really good reputation. It's a really big festival, and a lot of the biggest kind of Christian rock artists and hip hop artists go out to play this festival. And they actually they've had me out there, 7 or 8 of the last 10 years, and huge supporters of me. And the owners of that festival definitely are more progressive as well, which a lot of the people in the industry are, but that are the gate holders and key holders to the industry. But again, it's that audience they're catering to. But these guys decided to go out on a limb after my story came out and invite me to the festival anyway to show their support of me. And they got so much sort of backlash from it. There was people, the majority of the crew doing the stage and sound and lights, that were threatening to quit if I performed. And that all happened a week and a half before the festival. And so they invited me out a few months before, and then a week and a half before they canceled on us. And that was a tough deal, but it turned out to be a really special moment. One of the other bands still invited me to come perform up on stage with them. And it was really, the owners were behind it, and it was a really beautiful thing.
I guess in those instances, you find out who your true friends are pretty quickly, yeah?
Sure, yeah. And I mean, before they canceled me, they really were so stuck between a rock and a hard place, because they wanted me to be there so bad. And they're like, what do you want us to do? And it was like, if they didn't cancel me, none of the festival was even going to happen, because they weren't going to have any sound or stage or lights. And they weren't going to be able to fulfill the riders of their major headliners. And they were stuck. And it was just really a shitty situation of them not knowing what to do, and me going, well, obviously I don't want you to cancel your festival by refusing to cancel me. And it's been tough.
We get a lot of different musicians on this show, and you're the first one who has been considered a Christian rock artist. Just for the sake of my listeners, can you define Christian rock? Like, what is it that makes it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's
Christian.
Yeah, I don't still consider myself that. And to be honest, I was a young kid when I signed my first record deal, and pretty naive, and a lot of learning happens as you get out on the road and see the world and experience the world and experience people that believe different things than you. And sort of the Christian music genre in general is just, I think it started with good intention, maybe to kind of bring people together to try to do something that will make an impact for their beliefs, to be able to sing about their beliefs. People they used to sing hymns, of course, but
Right.
Music has progressed a lot since hymns were a big thing, and a lot of churches still do hymns, but most contemporary churches do more contemporary music. And so to have radio stations that would play that kind of music that was about your faith and things like that is really what Christian music sprang out of. I think it's become a lot more contrived than that, and it's definitely very much about selling to a certain audience that has a certain expectation and hiding whatever it takes to meet those expectations. And honestly, of the whole music industry that I've experienced, it's that sort of Christian genre that is the least authentic and the least transparent, because people are scared to be transparent. And that's the thing that sort of rubs conservative people wrong sometimes about the arts in general, whether it's movies or music or whatever it is sort of that raw honesty and transparency that might be about things that are go against their beliefs or whatever, but at least it feels real, and
Right.
There's so much that people complain about when it comes to Christian music, about how generic it feels and sort of lacking substance sometimes. And I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of transparency that is even allowed to be there. I mean, it's very different than even what you find in the scriptures that are full of doubt and just sort of really messed up people, and sort of the transparency that you find in that library of books of thousands of years of people doing somewhat insane things. And sort of now, especially in that kind of Christian market, it's very expected to be neatly packed and make sure it's all positive and uplifting, I suppose. But I think for me, I was so impacted as a teenager by that sort of genre coming up in youth group, because I started hearing music by people that claim to be from the same faith tradition I grew up in, that felt very cutting edge and felt very relatable. And I don't know, for some reason it made a big impact on me and kind of my love for my faith as a kid, and enough that I really wanted to be a part of whatever that was. And so I get the appeal to it, but I also get a lot of the sort of toxic things that it promotes and the lack of honesty happening within it. And so it's a weird thing, but it's interesting.
So basically, in order for a song to qualify as a Christian rock song, the lyrical content has to be about the Bible.
It used to, but then for me, even as a teenager, I'd find these bands that some of their stuff seemed like it was about that, or they just were on a Christian record label because they were outspoken Christians. But then most of their music might not have anything to do with that. But then, like, I would say most Christian radio, especially the kind that's the most popular, the adult contemporary Christian radio, it's the soccer moms that typically support that sort of thing. That is very much lyrically based about, God or Jesus or your faith, or it all has to come back to that for sure. And the more like edgy kind of rock stuff that I liked to listen to, there were bands like MXPX that were like huge influences on, Blink 182. And there were bands like, Reliant K and Switchfoot that, would cross over and have kind of more mainstream type hits and things like that. And so I think I was always intrigued by a lot of that and how they could still talk about their faith in their music, but they talked about everything. And so I think you see there's a whole spectrum of what happens within that genre. But, I think the biggest thing that I came to early in my career was just like describing Christian as anything except a person is usually not good as an adjective. It makes a much better noun, and I think, that's a Christian, Chick-fil-A is a Christian restaurant. Oh, Left Behind is a Christian movie. Oh, this is a Christian radio station. I just don't think that works very well. And I think it typically has lended itself and become this thing that becomes a selling point. You're using Jesus and your faith as a selling point more than you are anything. And that's where it starts to get tricky, and a lot of that authentic feeling seems to go away. And people seem more moved by Coldplay or U2 or whoever it is, Bruce Springsteen, than they do, the worship song on the radio. And you start to realize why that is.
What was that other band? Jars of Clay?
Yeah, Jars of Clay.
Now, that was a Christian rock band as well?
Yeah, they were on a Christian record label that was, a lot of these are owned by bigger umbrellas. They were owned by a Sony platform, Sony-owned Provident label group. So Provident is the Christian umbrella in Nashville, but they sort of somehow had this opportunity where a couple of their songs went to mainstream radio in the mid-90s and kind of went huge. And those were guys that I think didn't know what they were getting into when they signed to a Christian record label, or quite what that meant. And they really enjoyed just like having their music heard on mainstream radio. And they've always been pretty progressive guys, and they've been huge outspoken people when Jennifer Knapp came out, which was another kind of Christian artist. And when I came out, the singer Dan has been a huge ally and support. And honestly, when they even came out as allies for the LGBT community, they got dropped from Christian radio. They got dropped from Christian bookstores. Really got abandoned after they sold millions and millions of albums because, I guess that made them heretics for being supportive of the queer community or whatever. So
right. Well, that was the story I heard, was that the lead singer of Jars of Clay came out in support of gay marriage, and then, hell and brimstone came down on him for saying that, basically.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
What I find ironic about the whole gay issue with the Christians is that they considered being gay a choice, which, as far as anybody who is gay, I would say they would think it's not a choice. It's just the way you're wired.
Right. Yeah.
But
that was the argument for a long time. And the more and more that gets dispelled, now a lot of those churches are trying to say, well, you might be born that way, but then God expects you not to act on it. Apparently they just believe you should be lonely and miserable the rest of your life, and that's God's will for you because you were born gay or queer, whatever aspect that is. So
the irony for me, though, is that being gay isn't a choice, but being Christian is. Nobody is born a Christian.
It depends. I mean, most Christians would not say that, but there is a sect of Christians, even my parents, and a very it's a pretty big minority now, but there's these people that believe in predestination to the degree that God either chooses you were chosen before you were born to be quote unquote saved, or you're a child of the devil and you have no choice in the situation. And that's actually sort of the weird theology I grew up with even before I ended up in the church that I did as a teenager. And yeah, that's another weird thing that took me a long time to unlearn and sort of deal with. I had a lot of stuff going on.
That kind of holier than thou theology borders on the insanity. It really does.
Yeah.
All right, we got one of your singles now. Let's listen to this. This is called Silver Horizon. Tell us a little about the song.
This song is, it's very much about what my journey was like over that first year, from kind of when my life hit the fan to sort of coming out and being fully accepted and fully accepting myself for who I was. And there was a lot of hard things to have to go through to find that light on the other side. But, I guess it didn't just feel like a silver lining, but it really did feel like this new beginning. And it's been there's been a lot of tough things to have to go through, but often, like all good things that we find, you have to go through that before you're able to experience that beauty on the other side. And that's very much what the song's about.
All right. Well, here is Silver Horizon by Trey Pearson.
Head full of stars. Yeah, you swore you saw the love leaking from your heart. Down the boulevard, city lights swallowed up by an endless dark. Trying to break that chain, pulling all that weight. Well, it just makes you strong. When you're walking free, after bleeding beat, welcome back to the dawn. I cut my hands on the edge of the world, holding on with all my might. Crawl through the depths to the diamonds and pearls. I made it to the other side, and I saw you, waiting for me on the silver horizon. I saw you, waiting for me on the silver horizon. Oh, heart full of scars. No, you don't have to run from your broken parts. Now here we are, but we just keep pushing on. We don't know how far. Didn't want the pain to begin again, but it just makes you strong. When you're walking free, after bleeding feet, welcome back to the dawn. I cut my hands on the edge of the world, holding on with all my might. Crawl through the depths to the diamonds and pearls. I made it to the other side, and I saw you, waiting for me on the silver horizon. I saw you, waiting for me on the silver horizon. Oh no, I don't wanna feel the hurt from this broken heart. Oh, yeah, the heavy came down hard, but the light's not far. I cut my hands on the edge of the world, holding on with all my might. Crawl through the depths to the diamonds and pearls. I made it to the other side, and I saw you, waiting for me on the silver horizon. I saw you,
All right. Hey, that was nice. I like that.
Thank you very much.
It's got great energy, and I love your singing. Your voice is great. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice produced. It's catchy. It kind of has an 80s feel to it.
Sure, yeah. I'm pretty obsessed with a lot of 80s music, so I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's in there. I'm probably a good deal older than you. So the 80s, the 80s, I was a young man, and I remember a lot of sounds something like that. Like, I don't know, Duran Duran and...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that kind of...
I have a, kind of a weird obsession with a lot of the John Hughes movie soundtracks.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, maybe that's where it came from.
Don't You Forget About Me, and so much of that stuff. But I grew up just obsessed with everything from, judge me all you want, but I think Phil Collins is great. Love the Genesis stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's cause some of the more pop stuff like that, and of course, Michael Jackson and things like that. But I also I don't know. I was super into anything from NXS to Duran Duran to I think all over the board. OMD. Aha, any of that stuff. I was all about it. So Pet Shop Boys were awesome, and
that's another one. Yeah, Pet Shop Boys.
I think I found a lot of like that sort of mix of that kind of synth, prog rock or whatever that was. Synth pop.
Yeah.
To the Michael Jackson stuff and Billy Joel, Phil Collins. I loved it all. I still do.
Now, when you were with Everyday Sunday, I haven't heard any of the music from that. I'm sorry to tell you.
Oh,
but,
no, that's fine.
But what was the music like? Was it different than this one that we just heard?
Yeah. There's elements of that, especially towards the end of the Everyday Sunday stuff I was doing. And then I actually put out a side project with a friend between Everyday Sunday and this solo single. I had also put out another thing called Populous, and my early influences as a teen, kind of leading into that record deal, I was very influenced going from that 80s stuff into really just Weezer and Third Eye Blind and a lot of that 90s rock, power pop kind of stuff. I loved that stuff, and so I had a lot of that influence, and I'm very influenced by The Killers and Coldplay and some of those bands, and really enjoy a lot of that stuff. And so I think that kind of stuff you hear in this new music, but a lot of that mixed with a lot of the 80s influences. But I think just as I've kind of gotten into my career, I've really allowed myself to come a little bit full circle and rounding out a lot of those influences from the 80s and 90s stuff to even the more modern bands that I've really fallen in love with. And I'm super into so much of what a lot of bands are doing right now, and I really enjoy a lot of that stuff. And I think maybe just being able to take all of that and finding yourself in the midst of it and really just being able to be distinctly you. I think I've really found that as an artist who I enjoy being, and I think that can progress and change and does, but it all feels like me now, and I really I love being where I am artistically and just songwriting wise. I think there is a lot of Everyday Sunday songs that I'm proud of, but I think I'm by far writing the most quality stuff I've ever written before, and really just the best music I've ever done, lyrically and musically. But I think lyrically I've had something to tap into that I haven't been able to tap into my whole life, and so to sort of have that burst open, if you will, as an adult, and to be able to tap into those feelings for the first time that have been suppressed your entire life. It feels like this valve busting open and just sort of shooting out, and that's definitely felt like it's flown into my creative. I feel like I've processed and dealt with a lot of this artistically through songwriting, and so I think that's noticeable in this first song. But I think I'm finishing up my album right now or over these next few weeks, and I think that'll be very prevalent in the music that I'm putting out.
So are you still signed to a label?
No.
Okay, you're gone indie.
I had left my Christian label. I'd fulfilled my deal and decided not to re-sign before I had come out publicly. So, doing this all independently. I had a wonderful publicist who was able to sort of help me as I premiered my video with Teen Vogue and Billboard magazine, who had done several stories about me since I'd come out. I had no publicist or anything really at all when the story came out, and it was one of those things that I put it out there because I wanted to share my truth, and I was, I definitely hoped that a little bit of love would get poured out on me to drown out some of the hate that I knew would come in. But I was very grateful for all the people that picked it up without really any help at all. And since then I have I found a publicist, and Billboard just did a big June feature on me for Pride Month, and I've had a few really neat things come my way, but I'm doing it totally without a record label, with no management, with no booking agency, anything right now. And so it's a lot of work, but it's exciting that there seems to be people that want to hear what I have to say or hear my music, and just sort of taking it a step at a time so far. But I was able to do a Kickstarter and raise all the money I needed for my album, and I'm really excited to be in the spot that I am right now, and excited to share it with people.
Great. Are you going to tour as a solo act?
Yeah. I actually, I'm doing a lot of spot dates this summer, and playing at several Pride festivals. And this weekend I'm just playing another music festival in Indiana called Here Fest, and doing some spot dates right now, and then hoping to do a full tour for the album when it comes out.
Super. And you think the album will be out when?
I'm hesitant to announce a release date before everything's fully done, but the goal is I think it'll be out by the end of summer. So probably early September or something like that.
Oh, well, that's not too long. That's only a month away. Huh?
Yeah. Well, we're cranking. My producer's probably upstairs mad that I'm not in the studio right now. But, we're working hard to get this thing out to everyone.
All right, Trey. Well, we got to wrap this up, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and to be very
thanks for having me
forthcoming with your story. We really appreciate it. I think it's a great inspiration for people who may be dealing with their sexuality in a similar way that you are, or you did.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good story. I think it's a very necessary story to get out there. And as many venues and avenues as people can read about you, I think is positive. Because there is still hate in this country, and it seems to be manifesting itself in the silliest places. Bakeries that refuse to bake cakes for gay weddings.
Sure.
I mean, how crazy can it get? And they're going to take the cake stall all the way to the Supreme Court. It's in a place to get real crazy right now in the current state that we're in. But, yeah. This is where we're at in America. It's all about baking cakes.
I think sometimes, we'll take a few steps forward and then end up taking a step or two backwards. And I think that's the way we've always progressed as human beings. And, as soon as you think you've gotten past one thing, whether it's racially or in queer issues or women's rights, I think you think you're taking these steps forward, and then all of a sudden you see culture take a step or two back, and you're like, how did that happen? And I think we're very much in one of those step backs right now, especially in the US, but hopefully we keep taking those strides forward, and I do think it's changing, and very happy to see that.
I think we kind of zigzag sometimes. Yeah, we kind of go this way and then that way, but we do sort of move up little bit by little bit.
Yeah.
Anyways, Trey, thank you so much. It was nice listening to your music. Best of luck with the album, and I'll look forward to that coming out.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guest, Trey Pearson. This is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.
To the mile, you've got to run, not walk. To give a sermon, you've got to preach, not talk. To reach the mountain, you've got to climb, not dream. To say you love me, you've got to speak, not scream. All the way on love, can't do it just halfway. All the way on love, it's a big price to pay. All the way on love, if you feel it, then make it stay. 'Cause all the way on love, find salvation, you've got to pray, not pay. Forget the answer, it can't be found that way. Love was simple, we'd have it every day. So keep on searching, and clear will come from grace. All the way on love, can't do it just halfway. All the way on love, oh, it's a big old price to pay. All the way on love, if you feel it, then make it stay. 'Cause all the way on love. So hold on tight and learn to give, not take. Just keep it real and learn to make, not break. You think it's easy, life is upside down. That's when they'll tell you you've got to turn